Under the short, sloping hood of the Citroen Xsara Picasso, 6 power units were replaced. All of them had a timing belt drive. Until 2005, the role of the base was assigned to a 1.6-liter gasoline 4-cylinder engine of the TU series. Until 2000, he developed 90 horsepower, and after 95 horsepower. The engine is quite dynamic, provided that the car is not fully loaded. Perhaps this is the most reliable power unit in the range. At the same time, it is the only one that does not use hydraulic valve clearance compensators. The manufacturer does not indicate the interval for checking and adjusting the valve clearance. However, this procedure should be done after 150,000 kilometers or earlier if the engine starts to run noisier. In 2005, an 8-valve 1.6-liter engine replaced a more modern 16-valve with a pair of overhead camshafts. He is also quite reliable. The engine received hydraulic valve clearance compensators, which sometimes became a source of problems. Tired pushers made cold starts difficult and made sounds similar to a sewing machine. The 16-valve 1.6-liter engine replaced not only the 8-valve unit of the same volume, but also the larger 16-valve 1.8-liter EW series. Some of its modifications suffer from high oil consumption, which some blame on hardened valve seals, and others on general engine wear. With a cold start, problems arise even more often than with a 16-valve 1.6-liter. But in this case, the manufacturer is to blame, who used 2 small hydraulic valve lifters. Until 2002, 2 versions of the mechanical throttle actuator were installed in 1.816V, plastic and aluminum. The plastic variant often suffered from erratic idle. After 2002, an electromechanical throttle was used, but only one type. But she also made her uncomfortable. The engine sometimes either did not respond to gas at all, or answered, but very sluggishly. Often, it was possible to get out of the trance after refueling with gasoline with a high-octane number. Exactly the same problems, with the exception of erratic idling due to a dirty throttle valve, had a 2-liter unit, offered from 2003 to 2006. Perhaps, only with oil consumption, everything was not as bad as in the case of a 1.6-liter 16-valve. The 2-liter engine was combined exclusively with the AL4 automatic, developed jointly with CF. The automatic transmission offers just 4 gears and barely average reliability. Diesel units in the Citroen Xsara Picasso used 2. Until 2005, they installed 2.0 HD of the first modification marked DW10TD. Although the 109 horsepower version was widely used in other models of the PSA concern, Picasso got the 90 horsepower version. However, a weaker diesel is preferable in the long run, as it does not use more vulnerable and expensive components of variable geometry turbocharger and a dual-mass flywheel. The old-style common rail with Bosch injectors and an electric pump is responsible for the fuel supply here. And although mechanics speak well of the engine, owners from time to time have to deal with some vagaries of the fuel system. It all depends on the mileage. Fortunately, the problems with the systematically failing tank pump and the pressure regulator of the high-pressure pump were eliminated by Citroën during the production period. Both defects completely immobilized the car. In 2004, the 1.6 HD of the DV6 series appeared, first with a power of 90 horsepower, and 2 years later with a return of 109 horsepower. The weaker version is devoid of a dual-mass flywheel and has never been equipped with a particulate filter. The more powerful one uses a dual-mass flywheel and a DPF filter, depending on the market. However, the threat is not the mentioned components, but the lubrication system, which slowly and purposefully destroys the engine. The oil pan is designed so that even after removing all the contents, there is always half a liter of old oil left. Fortunately, experienced mechanics know that before closing the plug, you must first pour in a little fresh oil, which will drive out most of the old. The problem is that if you do not perform such a procedure, then the sediment from the bottom of the crankcase clogs the oil intake. As a result, the pressure in the lubrication system drops, which leads to accelerated wear of the turbocharger bearings and the cylinder head mechanism. Among the typical problems of the 1.6 HD are coolant leaks through a leaky EGR cooler. Many have heard that French cars are much more resistant to corrosion than competitors from Germany or Japan. The fact is that PSA mastered the galvanization already in the early 80s. But this does not mean that the French do not rust at all. They just start doing it later, and, as a rule, in places that are not accessible to the eye. Therefore, when buying a Citroen Xsara Picasso, this aspect should be given special attention. A sore point thresholds. Unfortunately, even on a lift, you are unlikely to notice corrosion. Rust skillfully hides under the outer layer of anti-corrosion treatment. The dramatic point is just behind the front wheel arches. For troubleshooting, you should use a sharp object, an awl or a knife. If the blade enters like a knife through warm butter, then you have found Picasso's weakest point. Repair consists in removing the rotten section of the threshold and installing a new one. But modern cars, for safety reasons, have thresholds consisting of several parts. They differ not only in the shape and thickness of the sheet, but also in the composition of the steel. The problem with thresholds is a hot topic in the discussions of Citroen Xsara Picasso owners around the world. However, some, lucky ones, are not familiar with the defect. The reason for the failure is getting dirt under the fender liner, which accumulates moisture. In addition, the threshold is equipped with plastic plugs. Over time, they lose their tightness, allowing dirt and moisture to penetrate even deeper into the threshold. The Citroen Xsara Picasso is the latest PSA car to feature torsion bars instead of classic rear springs. A typical weak point of this design is the beam needle bearings, which are difficult to replace. The repair kit includes a pair of bearings, a long screw, a bushing and seals. The problems with the rear suspension are indicated by the wheels and the shape of the letter A, house. In addition, there should be no unnecessary noise, knocking, and unstable behavior of the stern during maneuvers. Frequent trips with a full load or towing a trailer lead to the destruction of the torsion bars, of which there are 3 in total. Among the often recurring minor defects, incorrect readings of the fuel gauge can be noted. The reason is corrosion of the float potentiometer in the tank. It changes with the pump. The manufacturer has modified the assembly several times. Citroen Xsara Picasso is a well-deserved standard of the MPV class. If you need an inexpensive MPV, then Picasso is your choice. Unlike the more modern Citroen C4 Picasso, he managed to avoid fatal and expensive problems to fix. However, you should take into account the fact that the car was created in the 90s, which means you should not demand too much from it.